Kathy. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April meeting of the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority Commission. I am Andrew Taherzadeh, Assistant Director of Communications here at the EDA. I am your moderator for this meeting, which means I will have control over the audio functions of the Zoom call, and I will control the PowerPoint slides that will be used for the meeting. At this time, I would like to ask all those on the call to please mute themselves. Now, I would like to welcome members of the commission to the meeting. Chair Kathy Lang, Vice Chair James Quigley, Secretary Ron Johnson, Treasurer Stephen Partridge, and members Lenny Hainsworth, Rocky Mitchell, and Rick Wagner. FCEDA President and CEO Victor Hoskins and Executive Vice President Alex Imes are on the call, as are EDA Consul Mike Graff, a number of EDA staff members, consultants who represent the EDA in offices overseas and California, and our marketing communications consultants. I would also like to welcome Fairfax County officials who have joined us for the meeting, as well as our guest speaker for the evening, JB Halston of the Greater Washington Partnership. This meeting will consist of a public session followed by a closed session. The open portion of this meeting is being recorded. Presenting from the FCEDA tonight will be Chair Lang, President Hoskins, Executive Vice President Imes, and Vice President of Communications, Alan Fogg. Members of the FCEDA Commission who have questions will have the opportunity to ask questions as they normally would during meetings. If anyone from the public has any questions, please select the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen to ask a question, or email Cheryl Martelli of the FCEDA. Cheryl's email address will be posted in the chat box. We will not answer questions from the public during the meeting, but we will respond to all questions in writing afterward. So with that, I will ask Chair Lang to begin the agenda. Chairman Lang.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I want to welcome everybody to our April meeting. Happy spring. We have a very interesting meeting tonight. In addition to a number of staff presentations, we are delighted to have JB Halston, CEO of the Greater Washington Partnership, with us tonight. He will discuss regional collaboration efforts that his organization is spearheading and his thoughts on what direction collaboration efforts should head moving forward. We're looking forward to hearing from JB. Glad you could join us. Following the open session, as Andrew mentioned, we are going to have a break, and when we resume, the Commission, EDA Council, and invited EDA staff members will come back for a closed session. And when the closed session is over, we will reconvene the open session, certify that we met in closed session for only the specific reasons that we cited beforehand, and adjourn for the evening. So let's get started. I would like to start by asking for the approval of the minutes of our last meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March meeting?
Make a motion, Commissioner Quigley.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Quigley. Is there a second motion?
Lenny.
Thank you, Commissioner Hainsworth. Is there any discussion? Okay, so I call the question and council will call the roll.
Ms. Hainsworth.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Wagner.
Aye.
Dr. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. Partridge.
Aye.
Mr. Quigley.
Aye.
Chairman Lang.
Aye. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn it over to our treasurer, Commissioner Partridge, to present the financial report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Everything's pretty much on target. We're now in the fourth quarter. It's hard to believe we're already mid-April, but it's flying by, and we're trending pretty good with where we should be. We're 75% of the year, and we're about almost 70% spent out. we have a large expense coming from the marketing budget. If you look at the marketing budget, I think we still got about a little over 40,000 left. And I guess we've got a significant a business retention program launching to kick off this summer. So that will draw that money down, and everything else looks on target to spend down and use what's left. What maybe there might be a few percentage points there that we're going to be putting into programming. So the goal is to spend down what we have left for the year, and it looks like we're well on target to hit that goal.
Great. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Very good. This month, we have a matter relating to modification to an industrial revenue bond for the Madera School. So I'm going to turn it over to our counsel, Mike Graff. Mike?
Thanks, Kathy. As many of the commissioners and other folks participating this evening are probably aware, there's a variable rate of interest index called LIBOR, which stands for the London Interbank Offered Rate, and it's the basis for a lot of variable rate financings in all sorts of contexts, including in tax-exempt finance and a number of the existing revenue bond financings that the EDA has facilitated as a conduit issuer have LIBOR-based interest rates. It's been in discussion for a long time, but over the last couple of years and more recently, it appears that LIBOR will no longer be available as an index, and that change is expected to take place in the middle of 2023. And so there's been a lot of back and forth in the finance world about what happens to existing variable rate LIBOR-based indexed loans when LIBOR goes away, and pending the transition from LIBOR to another similar index. And so this is, I think, the first of the requests that we've received from one of our existing revenue bond applicants, if you will, the Madera School, but they've been proactive, and partly because they have an interest rate swap on their bonds, so it is particularly important to them that the swap matches the interest rate setting index on their revenue bonds. So they've been proactive in working with their financial advisor and with the lender that's the true provider of the financing to them on their EDA revenue bonds. And so they've asked us to consent to modifications to their existing revenue bond financing that would provide for some candidly pretty standard industry language that's developed around this issue, where there would be a transition to whatever the new benchmark rate is established in the financial markets. It's expected that that might be something called SOFR, but the changes to the documents would basically provide for a number of ways to reset the variable rate of interest on these bonds in a way that's acceptable to both the lender and to the Madera School between now and the time that LIBOR is actually expected to cease in 2023. So it's a rather technical amendment to the existing bond documentation, but as we know from a couple of modifications that we talked about during our last meeting, because the EDA serves as a conduit to allow its applicants to achieve this lower rate of interest on their financings, when modifications happen between the true lender and the borrower, oftentimes the EDA is asked to consent to changes to the documentation. So I've reviewed the documentation that's been prepared by counsel to the lender, and the purpose of the resolution this evening is simply to authorize the officers of the EDA to work with me to complete the modification document, deliver signatures, et cetera.
Right. So Is there a motion to adopt the resolution of the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority with respect to the proposed tax exempt revenue loan modification, the Madera School, as presented?
Chairman, this is Commissioner Johnson. I move adoption of the resolution as presented.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Partridge.
Very good. Is there any further discussion or any discussion? Very good. I will call to question and ask council to do the roll call.
Oh, thank you. Ms. Hainsworth,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Treasurer Partridge, Vice Chairman Quigley,
Aye.
Chair Lang.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
All righty. Thank you very much. So I just want to remind everybody, in the fall, we began a series of guest speakers. This was something new to how we operated as a board. And the purpose was to provide the commission and staff various perspectives about a post-COVID-19 economic recovery, which we all certainly hope we are on the road towards. These thought leaders are going to continue to help us with our strategic vision for the future. So if you remember, we kicked off the series with Fairfax County Executive Brian Hill, who talked about the incredible work the county government has done during the pandemic, and EDA collaboration with the county. Since then, we've hosted Dr. Gregory Washington, who, as you all know, is relatively new to his position, and he presented his vision for the university and his goals for talent development. Then we had Brian Kenner, head of policy at Amazon HQ2, along with several of his colleagues who updated us on the development of HQ2 and the company's presence in Fairfax County. And then Deborah Ratner Salzberg of RMS Investment Group, who talked about the importance of placemaking. And the amenities for communities that want to attract and retain businesses. And then in March, we had David B. Ritchie, Executive Vice President of Director of Commercial Leasing, where he discussed return to office strategies and the work his firm is doing in both Fairfax and Arlington. So we've had a fabulous array of speakers. And tonight, we're very lucky to have with us another speaker who is going to help us think more about how we collaborate and how we move the region forward. And I'm going to ask Vice Chairman Quigley to please introduce our guest.
Thank you, Kathy. Tonight, we are pleased to have with us J.B. Holston, CEO of the Greater Washington Partnership, a civic alliance of business leaders with the mission to foster unity, advance growth, and catalyze solutions to make the region the best place in the country to live, work, and build a business. JB has 30 years of success as a global scale-up CEO and entrepreneur, and is active in a range of civic initiatives around innovation, open government, entrepreneurship, impact investing, and media. He served as Dean of the University of Denver's Daniel Felix Ritchie School of Engineering and Computer Science from 2015 to 2020, where he increased the number of women enrolled and expanded the school's entrepreneurial offerings. JB was the founding executive director for the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network in Colorado, connecting serial entrepreneurs to promote and accelerate gazelle companies, those firms that will be Colorado's next economic and employment drivers. JB served as founding CEO for NewsGator, now Citrion, from 2004 to 2012. Prior to Citrion, Holston started a broad range of for-profit and not-for-profit enterprises at the locus of technology and media. Past positions include president of Ziff Davis International, where he was a member of the executive team that completed the successful leverage buyout of the company with Forstrom Little and a subsequent sale to SoftBank. He launched Yahoo Europe as a joint venture between ZD and Yahoo. JB held senior executive positions at NBC and GE after starting his career with the Boston Consulting Group. JB was named the Colorado Technology Association's Technology Executive of the Year in 2010. He serves on the executive committee of the Colorado Media Group, an organization he co-founded to strengthen Colorado's local news ecosystem. He previously served as chair of Senator Michael Bennett's Artificial Intelligence Strategy Group and chair of the American Society of Engineering Education's Policy Committee. JB has a bachelor's degree and an MBA from Stanford University. In 2014, JB was awarded the Colorado Technology Association's Bob Newman Lifetime Achievement Award for his contribution to the technology industry in Colorado. With that illustrious background, we're so excited to invite JB to the floor. Welcome, JB.
Thanks very much, Vice Chair Quigley. And after that introduction, I feel like I should be dead.
Well,
I have a feeling you and I have a mutual friend in Vern Harnish too. If you're so tied into the Gazelle companies and certainly Colorado, I'd love to learn more about your about scaling up. And I'll turn the floor over to you.
Well, thanks very much. And thanks, Victor, for the invitation to address this group. I'm really honored. There were a number of friends of mine's names that were mentioned by the chair as folks that have spoken to you in the past, including my former dean colleague, Greg Washington, now at George Mason. So it's an honor to talk with you folks. What I thought I would do is very quickly run through some information about the partnership, how it came to be, what it is that it's doing, how it goes about its work, and then talk specifically about ways that we can collaborate to catalyze solutions at pace and scale for the region, which is really what we're up to. I've got a number of slides here. I am going to fly through those very quickly so that I can leave time for Q&A. I think the most productive part of this will be a conversation we can have about ways that we can advance the region together. As was mentioned, our mission is reflected on this slide. It is regional, and the group has defined the region as from Baltimore to Richmond. It's all about unity and advancing growth, but it is uniquely focused on the multi-jurisdictions that correspond to this catchment. Next slide, please. Next one, we can skip this. The members of the partnership are an interesting group. It was formed originally in early 2017 by a few folks who put together an effort to bid for the Olympics in the region. All of you may recall that. But I think the insights that group had were that the only way really to go after some effort like that was to do it on a regional basis. And the group put together an absolutely marvelous bid, which didn't win. And some feel that's a good thing. Some feel that's an unfortunate thing. But I think in the process of putting that work together, decided that there was an ongoing need to have businesses collaborate across regional boundaries here. So formed formally early in 2017 as the partnership. And it took a couple of initial views. One is that it would be look at solutions that would cover the region, not just any one jurisdiction. Secondly, that unlike a lot of other groups like this around the country, it would be comprised of lots of different kinds of organizations. So if you look at the list here, for example, we've got large higher educational establishments. The president of Johns Hopkins is on our board, as is the president of Georgetown. We have large for-profit organizations, JP Morgan Chase, Microsoft. We have smaller but very influential organizations in the region as well, Monumental Sports. We have organizations in Baltimore, T. Rowe Price, and Under Armour, down to Richmond. Dominion Energy has been involved since the start as well. We have most of the major consulting firms engaged in the work too. And then we have our large not-for-profit healthcare organizations, both Innova and MedStar. So it's a unique group in that it doesn't just represent for-profit commercial organizations, and it doesn't represent any particular vertical. Instead, it represents large employers and passionate organizations committed to the future of the region. Next slide, please. These are just a few quotes from some of the folks on our board. I won't spend a lot of time on those. Peter Scher is the chair, the incoming chair of our board. He succeeds Russ Ramsey, who was the founding chair and one of the founders of the initiative as well. Kathy is the vice chair of our board. She's with Northrop Grumman, along with Ted Leonsis, and Ted was the co-founder of this initiative as well. Next, please. There was an article in the Post, some of you may have seen a week or two ago. The time flies by. It was a day that ended in Y, so we know that. But it wasn't too long ago. That talked about some work that we published recently that I thought was a pretty good expression of how the partnership has gone about doing what it does. We've done a lot of work in transportation. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But in particular, I think what that article did was point to the fact that we try to have our work be very analytical and data driven. In 2018, we published an initial long-term blueprint for transportation for the region. We partnered closely with Ernst & Young and a number of others in the development of that work. But from that has emanated a lot of other subsidiary work, one of which was a Rail Vision piece that we came out with about 3 weeks ago initially that generated this piece of press. And what I think is interesting about the characteristics of that work is that it has been supported by a tremendous amount of pro bono contributions from our consulting clients. It's very data driven and it's long term. As a number of our CEOs have said, if we're successful, the work will succeed well after the tenure of any of my board members, which makes for an interesting dynamic as we take some decisions. But in the transportation space, I think that's a perfect example. If we're going to significantly move the needle in making sure that this part of our infrastructure is as modern as this great region deserves, to ensure that this region has what it needs to be the most inclusive growth region for the long haul, it takes a great deal of time. It takes a long time. And so we've been doing this work for 4 years now. It's a 10 to 25 year endeavor. But we've had a lot of success, and we've had success by pulling together a really interesting group of constituents to collectively agree about priorities, to try to specify what the solutions need to be, and then to hold folks accountable to follow up on those. Next slide, please. A couple of things, you folks know this better than I, but as we think about the region, as was mentioned in my too long bio, I'm sorry for that length, but I spent a great deal of time in Colorado, which of course really grew over the last 25 years into one of the innovation hubs in the country, and did it very much on a grassroots basis. I'd argue that going into our efforts out there, we were kind of a two-horse pony. We had oil and gas and some telecom infrastructure, and that was kind of it. But subsequent to that, that state was able to diversify and modernize its economy in really interesting ways, and also become an incredibly attractive destination for young innovators, which has been a huge boon to its growth. If you look at the characteristics of this region, I think there are some interesting attributes that stand out. First of all, it's big. If you look, depending on how you measure the economy from Baltimore to Richmond, it is one of the largest economies in the country. And it has a tremendous amount of technical capability, though it may not be known as much as a source of innovation as other regions in the country. It has tremendous technical chops. Partly that's due to the incredible density in higher ed. I was involved in the Amazon HQ2 compete effort in Colorado. I lost to you folks, thanks very much. But in our conversations with Amazon, it was always clear from Colorado that the ability of this region to pull together a pipeline of digital talent for the long haul, and the research and higher ed infrastructure that existed and that could collaborate across boundaries here to provide that pipeline, was a tremendous attractor. So lots of attributes of the region that make this an extraordinarily exciting place with differential opportunity to grow going forward. Next slide, please. The work of the partnership is focused historically in 3 areas: skills and talent, mobility, transportation, and what we're calling shared prosperity. And I'll dive into each of these in a little bit more detail. Next slide, please. This bubble chart just talks to some of the specific things in each of those areas that we're doing right now. And I'm going to talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. I think Victor and I have had a good chance to speak about this on a couple of occasions, but the partnership, since it started recruiting me about a year ago, has really changed its emphasis is, I think, the way that I would put it, driven by the perspective of all of the partner organizations. And the frame for the work now is all about what we're calling inclusive growth. And both of those words are chosen intentionally. Inclusive is what it implies. It's meant to mean an economy that provides opportunity for all. But in particular, this group has collectively decided that the differential opportunity for the region is to be the most inclusive and equitable economy in the country, and that to the degree that we're able to deliver on that, will also will be the most attractive economy. As I've been telling folks, inclusion is the new innovation, and that will redound to all of our benefit. We'll become the most attractive place, not just for talent that may come here, but also for talent that's grown here to stay here. So inclusive growth is really the wrapper we're using to define all of the work, with specific emphasis then on opportunity, on skills and talent, and on transportation. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the history. I won't spend a lot of time. These are things that we were engaged in or did at various points in time over the last 3 years. Metro Now is a cross-regional group that we established to create a coalition to make sure that the metro system here is as modern as possible. There's a lot of incremental funding that has come from that work, as many of you know. Much of that work has been kind of quiet and behind the scenes, but the partnership was instrumental in getting that off the ground. We were involved in the Amazon recruit effort. Again, I wasn't here. I was a victim of that, but of course, you folks were in absolute pole position in making all of that happen. But I think the partnership was helpful in, I saw some of the letters, for example, 89 higher ed leaders signing on to say, we will lay down swords to make sure that there is digital talent for Amazon wherever we may be, both governors and the mayor. Those were, I think, contributions to that process that were pretty unique to this region. There were a lot of efforts that Amazon was looking at, which were a lot more fragmented than I think how this appeared to them. In June, we launched an initiative in digital skills and talent called CoLab. I'll speak a little bit more about that. I mentioned funding for Metro, et cetera. Next slide, please. Lots of work in the last year and a half. Like many of you, last year we spent a great deal of effort on what we called inclusive recovery. We did a lot of work looking at standing up more testing capacity. We spent a lot of time with a lot of the school districts across the region, a lot of the higher ed institutions, in trying to get everyone on a similar page with respect to the question of testing and reopening schools. I think we were able to contribute to that dialogue in a pretty significant way, although I think all of us have been a little bit frustrated about how rapidly that was able to take place. That was really driven by the companies saying, gee, we'd all like to open as fast as we can, but even if we have all the right protocols in place, until the schools are reopened, our folks aren't going to be able to come back. So how can we help? Next slide, please. As I mentioned, lots of focus on inclusion and equity. We've got some announcements coming later this week around a strategy council that we're going to be launching with a couple of renowned folks in the region leading that effort. We are launching some work on a blueprint for the region on inclusive growth, very much tracking what we did in transportation and what we did in digital skills and talent, try to understand where the gaps are, have a dashboard to track what the solutions are that are filling those gaps, and then catalyze the solutions that can meet those gaps as well as possible. One of the things that we did a little bit quietly as well is we've created a scholarship for women and minority students who enroll in the digital tech credential that the CoLab does. Let me quickly dive into the work in a little more detail, then I'll stop and take questions. Next slide, please. CoLab is really interesting. Was started by the employers collectively getting together and putting together what, with our friends at McKinsey, we called the employee signaling system. It's a mechanism to determine what kinds of skills, capabilities and skills and attributes people would need to have for those companies to hire them in tech or tech adjacent kinds of positions. From that, we've developed credentials that in turn institutions of higher education community colleges on up have signed on to. And we now have, I think, about 25 higher ed institutions across the region having students go through and get certified according to these certifications. They are eligible for scholarships, as I mentioned. I think what was unique about that is getting all of those kinds of higher ed institutions and all of those employers to collectively agree both that these non-traditional kinds of offerings would be valued by the companies and then would be offered by the educational institutions. Next slide, please. Regional mobility, I touched on some of the work. If any of you want to nerd out on transportation, boy, have I got reports and analyses and data for you. Just let me know afterwards. But we have done an awful lot of work on everything from rail to transit-oriented development to the Greenway up in Baltimore and other kinds of issues and opportunities to generate commitment to and funding for and follow through on some of the critical transportation infrastructure, ground transportation infrastructure issues for the region. And I think the partnership has played a really important role and kind of filled a critical gap in all of that. But along with the Council of Governments and other organizations like yours in concert, because this is work, of course, that can't be done unilaterally. But I do think the partnerships played a pivotal catalytic role for some of these solutions. Next slide, please. I mentioned inclusive growth, shared prosperity. We've been doing a lot of work with McKinsey to try to create a framework to understand where the gaps are in the region to ensure that we become the most equitable and inclusive economy in the country. And we've done some deep dives in certain sectors like the CDFI and MDI sector, where we're working with various constituents in that field to come up with a long-term plan so that those critical frontline organizations are the strongest in the country, frontline for providing inclusive opportunity to certain kinds of communities. More coming on that later this week, but a lot of work going forward in what we're calling shared prosperity within inclusive growth. Next slide, please. All of this really is about our trying to take the power of the people we have on our board, the organizations that they represent, and in close collaboration with organizations like yours, identify critical long-term solutions and collaborate to catalyze those solutions at pace to get them to scale. We think that when we do that collectively, that means this region accelerates more quickly than any other region in the country. It has every attribute necessary, from diversity to higher ed density to tech skills to the opportunities with the capital and the federal government to lead the nation. And we're dedicated to doing everything we can to help deliver on that. So that's enough about us. 25% of that was taken up by my bio. Apologies again for that, but why don't I open it up now for any questions or comments if there's anything I can answer. But thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you, JB. I know my colleagues will have questions as well, but I would like to open up by saying thank you. Thank you for the work you and the partnership has been doing to build regional collaboration across the entire region. I have two questions for you. One, whenever someone with your background and experience in economic development and innovation, entrepreneurship moves to our region, I love to hear your why you're out there in Colorado, obviously an exciting growing market, but how did we woo you? What was the thing that brought you here and got you excited about this role?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that. I think it wasn't because I told my mini husky about the summer weather. That was not, but it really was a couple of things. And thank you for the question. One was the partnership itself is a really unique construct. Having these kinds of organizations collectively make the kind of commitments they did to grow a region across jurisdictional region is quite unique, and that in itself was quite attractive. I think that the components are all, in some ways it sort of reminded me of what I found in Colorado when we moved there in the 90s, which is that there were so many elements ready to, when knit together in a really positive way, could just accelerate opportunity. And I felt strongly that that's the case for this region too. It's obviously complicated when you're dealing across jurisdictions, et cetera, but you know, the Amazon HQ2 experience was interesting for me. You know, seeing the success of this region in that effort. I'm sure it wasn't all as seamless and easy internally as it seemed from the outside, but that was striking. It really struck me that you know, that this region has a unique opportunity. And then we have a lot of roots here as well on a personal basis. My wife is an attorney, and I think virtually everyone from her class is now here in DC as well. So it was an opportunity to spend time here too.
My last question, and I'll turn it over to the other commissioners here. What's the number one thing we can do to help support the partnership in a more regional approach? What do you think is our number one thing we can do to help?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think there are a couple of things. One is, I think if there are development opportunities where voices from the region would be helpful, let us know. In other words, and so I'm thinking again of the Amazon HQ2 sort of thing. You know, there will be more of those for sure. There should be more of those. And I do think where we can work with you to add that kind of regional voice, we'd welcome that opportunity. And I think that can be really beneficial for all of us. We do have a big focus on inclusion and equity. So I think the more that we can jointly look at what that work looks like it should be, we can compare notes, we can collaborate on that. I think there's going to be real power in collaborating in that category as well. So I think that category of work, and then the specific economic development opportunities that arise, you know, let's jointly just crush Texas, darn it.
Question
Amen.
for you. Relative to CoLab and all of the efforts that were brought together to create CoLab and then get commitment from companies to value the credentials that are awarded as part of CoLab. Now that you have some runway behind you, what happened and what can be done going forward? How well received was that whole approach, and what's the outcome? Are companies really taking advantage of those graduates?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and those are great questions and exactly the issue. I think that what's been unique is getting the employers collectively to agree on these KSAs. I think that's kind of the secret sauce, because if you can get a diverse set of employers to collectively say, yes, we will value this, and this is specific enough that educational institutions can then say, we can do that, or we already do that. That's I think has been where the big win has occurred. We do have a few thousand students going through it. George Mason, actually, interestingly, is, you know, the biggest institution in that regard. With respect to how it's changing outcomes for those students, we don't know enough yet, to be honest. I think that having been a dean, I'll give you my answer from the former academic point of view. I think it's changing the trajectory for a lot of students in interesting ways. And it's doing it in ways that I think won't necessarily manifest in the first job or in the first internship, but instead is going to give them a set of digital skills and capabilities that, as they develop their career, will mean that they're going to have a set of opportunities that they probably wouldn't have had if they hadn't had that added certification. So I think that's all to the good. Going forward, getting more employers engaged. This is like any of these kinds of programs. It's like apprenticeship programs or any of the rest of those. You know, I think there's a real economy to scale in the more employers that sign on to do these things, the more that signals to the educational establishments. That's one. Lifelong learning is another. You know, we've got a great set of partners in educational institutions. We're doing a lot of work with K through 12 jurisdictions in a number of the counties as well. There's much more work that needs to be done with non-traditional learners, and it's interesting, a number of the education establishments that are partners are getting more of the students from their continuing learning parts of their organizations into these programs than from the traditional cohorts, which I think is also something they're learning, that, you know, there's really high value and high return for those students. But we need to get more employers and more lifelong learners involved in all of these. And really, from our perspective, boy, anything we can do to open architect this is great. You know, the more we can have this adopted by others, the faster. That's really what the partnership's designed to do. It's designed to catalyze these solutions, but not really be a program manager. So we're really happy we've catalyzed this one, and now want to make sure that everyone just jumps in as much as possible. We're not going to do a Coursera IPO with CoLab. One of our board members said, "Why don't we just create a SPAC?" The other day. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I have a question for you also. I love your 3 initiatives because I think they're right on target, you know, the skills, the regional mobility, and then inclusive growth. And what I'm wondering about is, given your analytical abilities and your ability to really capture what's going on, are you going to be creating some kind of framework, communications framework, that will help educate the region at all levels about what is going on with inclusion and equity? Now, I work with a lot of organizations in this area, and everybody is trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. And it would seem to me that with your regional view, the ability to be able to capture that perspective and then really build on it and help educate leaders across the region. So is that part of what you're thinking about?
Yes. Yeah. No,
Good.
that's
I like that answer.
But that's exactly right. You know, we're the initial, we're going to be working on both what we're calling a blueprint and a dashboard, which are specific expressions of those things. But a lot of what we can do is just really quickly and at scale share best practices. So, you know, one example, we have a number of the companies that are engaged in work with a group called MLT and in an initiative called Black Equity at Work. We've got a number of companies that are working with another organization called 110. And so one of the things that we're doing is working hard to open up both those programs to more corporate participants around the region, because if we can get bigger cohorts adopting those kinds of programs, we're going to generate a lot of data about what really works well. And then we can quickly share that across to a lot of other institutions. But I think you hit it on exactly. I think one of the things that we can do, given that analytic depth, is in the blueprint show where all the things are that need to be done to ensure that we do get to those kind of long-term inclusion and equity goals, and then keep track and hold all of us accountable. So yes, that's absolutely how we believe those are fundamental roles that we need to play.
And just one other sideline, you know, you've got Brookings here, you have Pew Research, you've got amazing research institutions that can go along with you in some of this work. So
that's exactly it. When we've talked with those, we've done a lot of work with Urban on, you know,
Urban Institute,
as well on affordable housing. But you're exactly right. It's a huge differential set of capabilities in this region that that when marshaled for the region can have tremendous impact. We were fortunate to have one of the first meetings with Secretary Buttigieg, and you know, one of the things that we said to him was, hey, you know, think of us as kind of a beta site for whatever you want to do. You know, think of this region as the first place to go to sort of get stuff happening. We had the same conversation with Secretary Raimondo, but there's such a, you know, rich array of opportunity right here that when we marshal that, make the case, pull the data together, and then bring everyone together around that, remarkable things can happen.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Well, thank you so much, JB, for coming and sharing your vision with us. It's very exciting. And I think, as James said, whatever we can do to support you, we certainly want to be there with you and for you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank you, JB.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thank you, Victor.
Good seeing you too.
All right. Wow. Thank you. All right. So I have a very brief report tonight. Our May Commission meeting, we will be hearing from Jerome Davis, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Revenue Officer at the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, for a discussion about how Dulles International, Reagan National Airports have fared during the pandemic and what the outlook is for the rest of the year. So it's important to hear what's going on. I'm really excited to see them coming to talk to us because they're such an important part of our economic development. And then in June, we have Ann Kress, who's the president of Northern Virginia Community College, Steve Partridge's boss, who will be coming to speak to us. If there is anything in particular that you would like Ann to address, please let Steve know, because she will be looking for any guidance from us. She will be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on educational institutions and on the reopening innovations in education that are taking place at the community college, and the important work they're doing around workforce development. And then in July, our speaker will be Eileen Ellsworth, President and CEO of the Community Foundation. She's going to talk about the organization's work to promote economic equity for all the region. They've done a lot of research, and so they're going to be coming and reporting back to us. So we will be thinking about speakers for the rest of the year. So if you have someone in mind that you think we should include, please let me know. And my second item is to let you know I've been in conversation with Chairman McKay about a Board of Supervisors joint FCEDA meeting. We don't have a date. I thought it might be in June. I'm not sure yet. Obviously, June's almost here. So I will keep you in the loop. This is something we traditionally do, but I'm waiting to hear back from them to find out when that meeting will be. And we'll have more to talk about in the closed session. And now let me turn it over to our president, Mr. Hoskins.
Thank you very much, Chair Lang. Well, I want to begin by saying that this has been a very busy 30 days since our last commission meeting. Next slide, please. We were very fortunate in that we were able to be part of the Virginia Economic Development Association's spring conference. And actually, Mike Batt held the mantle for us on talent. And I have to say, he showed everyone something. Mike has the best program in the state right now, and people were really taking notice as to what we're doing. So it's something to be proud of. And I want to personally thank Mike in front of everyone for his great work and how well he has collaborated with everyone on our team, and how he just really leaned into the activity with the Northern Virginia Tech Council. I think that's going to make a huge difference in terms of filling the tech talent pipeline, because that's where all the tech companies are. Next slide, please. I had the opportunity, and this was actually fun. Carl Brown, I don't know if any of you have heard Carl Brown's show. He's on Sirius XM, but his show is broadcast from Howard University. It's the Howard University radio channel. And it's syndicated around the country, so it's broadcast all over the country. Carl wanted to talk to me about a number of things, and we discussed, the things that are going on with Amazon HQ2. Of course, he wanted to know about that. We talked a little bit about the collaboration and the things that we were doing in terms of how we are collaborating and what we're collaborating about. And also, the most important thing that we discussed was how we are delivering services to companies during COVID-19 pandemic. We talked about the RISE program. As you know, Rebecca Moldry and her team, supported by the folks at the Community Business Partnership at George Mason University, did an incredible job of delivering $52 million to over 4,800 companies, all of them with 50 or less employees, 72% minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses. He was just stunned that we were able to do that. But we aren't the only ones that did that. Other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia did that, and I talked to him about that. But we didn't have enough time, so he's asked me to come back. So I'll be going back there in a couple of weeks to talk on other subjects that we didn't have a chance to talk about. But it was really a lot of fun because he understands how important it is to get the services to the businesses directly. Next slide, please. I also had the opportunity to sit on a panel with a couple of folks, one from Capital One, talking about their big project in Tyson's and the wonderful center that they're building for the performing arts. And in addition to that, there was a person from the Tyson's partnership, but we were talking about the environment in Tyson's and how it's changed over the years. I was fortunate in that I gave the broad picture and they gave the more micro picture, but it was really enjoyable to hear from future residents of Tyson's. These were all, it was about 100 residents that are buying into the Tyson's Mather project. I don't know how many of you have seen the Mather project, but you might want to Google it and look at it. I know I want to live there one day. It is a fantastic facility for 65 plus. And I have to say that this group of individuals that were on this Zoom call, I have never, ever seen so many questions in my entire life. I mean, it was unbelievable. And many of them emailed me afterwards. So it was really great. I got to tell you, these must be some extraordinarily well-educated folks. It was really fantastic. Next slide, please. Tomorrow, I have the opportunity to be part of an international investor event. This group, AFIRE, it's an association of financial investors, foreign investors. That's what it stands for, foreign investors in real estate. And we are going to be doing a panel presentation. We've pre-recorded part of it, and we have jurisdictions around the country that also have pre-recorded parts of their presentation. Chicago, Boston, Cambridge, our competitors from around the country, and we're talking to investors as to why they should invest in our jurisdiction. First is everybody's what they call the sizzle reel. They're going to run a sizzle reel of everybody, and then we'll be open to questions as panelists. So I'm really excited about that. I was very fortunate to do an interview prior to this event, and about 60–70% of the interview was about Amazon and its impact on the Washington, D.C. region. That's why I had the opportunity to do that. Next slide, please. This week, I get to also sit down with some young people. These are people who are involved in the leadership program at the International Economic Development Council. I really love talking to young professionals on this subject, and they just want to know, story of my career and what I'm doing right now in Fairfax County. I think that we're doing some of the most amazing cutting edge things for people and for businesses. And that's rare. And I can't wait to talk to them about it. Next slide, please. I also get to do this week an event with George Mason University. This one is focusing on government contracting. As everyone on this Zoom call knows, we have one of the most powerful government contracting ecosystems in the world. We have the biggest customer in the world, which is the Defense Department. And I'm proud to talk about that. And I'll have the chance to talk about the why you should grow your business in government contracting here. Next slide, please. And this last item is Jewels of Asia. I did this last year. They asked me to talk a little bit about our relationship with the Asian Chamber and our work with the Asian Chamber and how Fairfax County Economic Development works with the businesses in the Asian community. I enjoyed doing it last year and I have an opportunity to do it this year. I'm recording it this week. That's why it's on this list right now. And before I turn it over to the next speaker, which is Alan Fogg, I want to mention that Mike Batt has an opportunity to hire a new manager. As you all know, he has been extraordinarily busy. His workload is only growing. We are connecting with more universities. We're connecting with more companies, and he needs some more hands on deck. And we recently had a resignation of one of our staff members who actually went to Korea to study the Korean language and culture. So it's unfortunate that she left, but we're in very good shape in that they're currently recruiting. And with that, I'm sorry, next slide, please. And that, let me turn it over to Alex Imes. I'm sorry, Alex.
Thanks, Victor. Sorry to disappoint you all. Alan will be with us shortly. Good evening, commissioners and Madam Chair. I am here to provide an update on the economic recovery framework, which you all may recall we started in collaboration with on late in the summer and completed just a bit earlier this year. And on March 16th, just 3 weeks ago or so, the Department of Economic Initiatives and our colleagues Rebecca and Etta gave a presentation to the Board of Supervisors at the Economic Initiatives Committee, where they presented a series of proposals coming out of the economic recovery framework. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of those and then give you an idea of some of the things that we'll be collaborating with them on going forward. Next, please. So first of all, just backing out for a minute, there's two things that I want to tell you about the recovery framework. And I thought they were better said by Chairman McKay and by Victor, relating to how the strategies and approaches have been developed. JB mentioned being data-driven. We were very data-driven too, in terms of understanding which types of businesses and industry sectors were hardest hit, and therefore where to direct the efforts through the pandemic. And then Victor is saying that we were one of the first jurisdictions in the country to do this, and we really were. I mean, everybody was reacting in real time, but this is charting how we will continue to support businesses once the pandemic, we hope, is winding down and businesses are reopening, but still feeling the effects of, the past 12 to 14, 16 months of being heavily disrupted. So those are two things that stood out to me about the approach in general. If you could go to the next, please. And then just categorically on the recommendations, I wanted to refresh your memory on some of the things that have been recommended, and that now DEI is working with the various agencies, including us, on implementing. The first part is business recovery and resilience, and this could relate to things like providing a further round of grants and technical assistance to companies who are getting back on their feet. Things like regulatory action, where there have been certain things adapted during the pandemic that will help businesses regardless of the conditions of operating conditions that can be learned from the past 12 months and implemented into permanent policy. Workforce and talent support, we're very familiar with that, but there are different ladders within the workforce system that the county also manages. And so we'll be as supportive as we can in that area. Support for workers and families, this relates to pieces like childcare and corners of the county that do not have the same broadband reach that the majority of the county has. And then on physical and community planning, you're talking about commercial corridor revitalization and technical assistance to the types of businesses who have been typically hit hard in restaurants, small retail, hospitality, and the arts. Next, please. So just some specifics in terms of the upcoming collaboration areas. I think a couple of things that stood out on the March 16th meeting that Rebecca laid out for the Board of Supervisors was the idea of these pivot grants that can go to helping businesses in an additional round of small business grant funding. How that will actually be paid for is to be determined, but there are sources of funding, including the federal American Rescue Plan funds and potentially county funds out of the Economic Opportunity Reserve. There's also a set of programs that DEI is working on called Thrive programs. And these will be programs to help businesses in the ways that we do, complementing our programs, but specifically related to recovery and in the areas of businesses heavily impacted that I mentioned. Some of the things that they'll also be working on that we can help is the idea of a shop by local campaign. We can help them identify companies. We can help with the marketing and rollout of that type of effort. And the commercial corridor piece, as you all know, we've been working on the Richmond Highway study and completed that. And now in the next phase, we'll be working on things like investor promotion and have also pretty consistently been reaching out to businesses in those areas to help them with their business plans. So that's the summary. I think Rebecca is on the call. If there are any questions, we are happy to take them now.
One of my questions is not, first of all, great work, and then great work in terms of urgency. So how is, if at all, that urgency it has been communicated? How broadly do our current does the current business community understand, as well as, how have we made hay on communicating and selling the message that while other jurisdictions were we were experiencing, planning, and implementing solutions?
That's a great point. So, following on the meeting in March, Alan's team put out a release on the recovery framework, highlighting the work that we had done and bifurcating, I think, the work that we were doing in real time, because I think we were incredible at adapting in real time and using our resources and, cross-supporting functions with the county to support businesses then. But all of this, as I mentioned, was done so that we would be ready for this next stage. And I think Alan, and his team did a great job with their release in the eBird, and we would be happy to share that with you. And I know that we were pretty integral in identifying stakeholders during the process, and actually put some additional effort and funding into getting beyond people who subscribe to our newsletter or
Right.
eBird,
Right.
and actually going into the communities and bringing people into forums who were representing larger groups of businesses, so the different chambers and people, like working for Southeast Fairfax and the different nonprofits in the community to get the word out. I 100% agree with you that anything we do going forward needs that same level of effort and commitment to sort of refresh them and remind them that not only are there things that we've been doing for you all along and will continue, but we are actually, pressing forward with the urgency that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to being nimble and agile and highly effective in the midst of distress. And you've done a terrific thing. I just want to make sure we are foot stomping it and sharing that message as broadly as we can.
Yeah, I think that there will be other things, other opportunities to do that. Right now there are numerous awards even that we could apply for that elevate the work that we've done and how innovative it was, I think, in the time, where we were thinking ahead while we were still really in some dire straits.
Well done.
Thank you.
I think we are ready for Alan Fogg.
Well, terrific. Hey, thanks everybody. Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, commissioners. I will say, just following up on Alex, he has done a tremendous job with DEI in getting this work done to this point. The county also has done a nice job in communicating it out. Got some good coverage last month on the report, but there is more to come, as Alex said, and we're working with the county on that. So stay tuned. We will have more on this because it really is terrific work that's been done. So I've got 3 great marketing communications issues to report on tonight. Next slide. First is our authority angle of the month. In the last few months, we've highlighted comments from CEOs about the why that James talked about earlier, why this is a great location for businesses. This month, we're spotlighting a report on a major industry report and the media that it got. CBRE, which you all are familiar with, of course, put out a report on data centers in North America. And the upshot is that Northern Virginia completely dominates that market. This slide has 2 sentences, just 2 sentences from the report. The one on the left calls Northern Virginia the largest data center market in the world. And the one on the right notes that 61% of the data center capacity being added in 2021 is happening in Northern Virginia amongst the 7 major markets, which include Silicon Valley, New York, Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, and there are a few others. Next slide, please. There are some other really great nuggets in this report that really tell a great story that I have to share with you. I mean, see that top one, that Northern Virginia has 4 times the amount of data center capacity as Silicon Valley, and that 66% of all capacity added in these major markets, the 7 major markets in 2020, happened here in Northern Virginia. Next slide. Now let's get down to brass tacks. CBRE got some good pickup in the media, both in trade press and in DC area business outlets. We had DCI look at this, and they reported back that media coverage generated more than 112 million impressions, and that the earned media value that CBRE got for this was a shade more than 600,000. But it wasn't really just CBRE that got the benefit from this. The WTOP headline for their story was, Northern Virginia remains king of data centers. Well, how's that for branding and for helping us tell our story? That's brand awareness that all members of the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance can take advantage of. In fact, that's what DCI is doing right now with a national media pitch that's based in part on the CBRE report. This is pretty cool. All right, next slide. So the other thing about this is that this kind of attention is another reason why Google searches for the term Northern Virginia have risen by 82% in not quite 2 years. So Victor has done a lot of talking about the power of a big team to win at whatever we do. Highlighting the region's data center dominance is one of the many business assets that we can highlight for branding purposes, as well as for business investment prospecting. Next slide, please. Second, I want to tell you about a new digital marketing campaign that we're undertaking soon. And this is something that Steve mentioned early on in the meeting. We're calling this the Success Lives Here campaign, which plays off the Innovation Lives Here campaign that won Northern Virginia a little company headquarters, Amazon, in 2018. So let's give credit where credit is due. Victor came up with this idea. He recommended this kind of effort to highlight business success in Fairfax County through a digital campaign, while travel and other business expenses are curtailed for this fiscal year. So we have 3 goals: spotlight companies that have grown and succeeded here, build the Fairfax County brand for business success, and 3, highlight the diversity and breadth of our business community. Well, this was pretty cool how we've gone about this. We asked our business investment team for recommendations on which companies to highlight. They came up with a great list. Then we asked the business investment folks to reach out to those companies. And really all credit to the business investment folks, because we had a very quick and very responsive, a very great positive response from many of the companies that they recommended. And we decided to move forward with the companies that you see here. So there's great diversity in these industry sectors represented here, and the size of the companies as well, from publicly traded Fortune 500 financial technology giant Capital One, which of course has thousands of employees here, to SenseWare, which is creating HVAC sensors that can detect COVID and is a small business still, probably not for very long. And of course, many of the companies represent some IT field. These companies also represent tremendous diversity of ownership and leadership. Thompson Hospitality is an African-American owned business, and it's the largest minority-owned food service company in the nation. Amcus, an IT services firm, was started and is led by a woman. And ID.me is an identification verification firm started by a veteran. So DCI is doing three things now with this. One, they're working with the companies to create short profiles. Two, they're designing an ad campaign, which would run mostly locally on popular media outlets and on social channels, that mix to be finalized later. And three, creating a landing page for our website for the entire series of profiles, so all the 13 companies. Now, as we spotlight the success stories and build our brand, our call to action will be to drive traffic to the landing page so readers can see all the companies listed. Not really ever had a paid campaign like this locally, showcasing successful companies to build the brand. And our target is to have the landing page up before the end of the month, and the ads will run through the end of the fiscal year. So June 30 would be the end of this campaign. Very excited about this, really cool. Next slide. Finally, before you adjourn the public session and head into closed session, I wanted to show everyone on this call the Economic Development Authority's 2020 annual report. For the first time, it's not a printed document, it's a video. And appropriately titled 2020 Rising to the Challenge, the report highlights how the EDA collaborated with the county government and many other partners to move forward as a resilient region. Details how the partners and EDA helped local businesses bridge the pandemic through outreach, technical assistance, and events, many events. Told the stories of area pandemic heroes nationally through media relations. We launched a robust talent initiative that is connecting thousands of job seekers nationwide with our hiring employers, and working with nearly 150 businesses that announced the creation of 11,000 jobs in the county during a pandemic. Fitting that the annual report is presented in a new way that showcases the new and effective ways that the EDA is operating. I hope you enjoy the content and format of the report, and that it leaves you with what it leaves me, a sense of pride in the impact that the authority achieved for Fairfax County and Northern Virginia in 2020 through collaboration and impact. Our plan is to post video this week and spotlight it on our eBird Extra newsletter on Thursday. Here's the video.
In January 2020, we planned for a year of firsts. New services and initiatives like talent attraction. In March, the pandemic brought even more firsts. Challenges to economic development like we've never seen before. But we took those challenges and met them with new innovations. We moved forward together. Federal, state, and local officials approved unprecedented assistance for businesses. And then we got to work, connecting thousands of local businesses with financial assistance. In fact, 72% of the Fairfax RISE grant recipients were women, minority, or veteran-owned businesses. We presented or sponsored 3 times as many virtual events than in 2019, offering free legal assistance, small business mentors, and access to capital for minority-owned businesses with U.S. Senator Mark Warner. We even hosted a tutorial with experts from Facebook. More than 13,000 people tuned into these virtual events, giving businesses the information they needed. In addition to supporting local businesses, we quickly launched a new talent initiative to connect people to companies hiring in our region. We created the region's first talent website. Digital advertising and social media influencers drove talent across the nation to open jobs featured on our website. The message? Northern Virginia is still hiring, with more than 80,000 open jobs. We also hosted and supported virtual career fairs. Thousands of job seekers attended these fairs, ranging from hospitality workers to technologists to recent college graduates. We collaborated with colleges across the U.S., including 9 historically Black colleges and universities, so that students and alumni could find careers in Northern Virginia. The Talent Initiative offered real value to our region's employers and even earned an IEDC Excellence in Economic Development Gold Award. Nearly 150 companies continue to invest in Fairfax County, creating thousands of jobs. Global leaders like Microsoft and Volkswagen announced major Fairfax County expansion plans, a testament to our skilled and diverse talent pool, and proven innovation in the tech industry. Social distancing didn't stop us from telling the stories of our local heroes, competitive community, and resilient region. We highlighted the region's innovative pivots to COVID-19, from robots delivering takeout to dentists 3D printing face masks. We showcased Northern Virginia's regional approach to becoming the innovation leader in the Western Hemisphere. In 2020, we met challenges with collaboration, innovation, and impact. Because every job we save a household. When we save households, we save communities.
Yes.
Wow.
Bravo.
Nice job. Nice job.
Nice job.
I just love the ending,
Beautiful.
especially. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That was great. Please thank the team for all their effort. It was great to watch, and it was really powerful. So thank you. Great report. We
Thank
all
you.
should be very proud.
You should.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you got it. Okay, so that is the open meeting for tonight. I'm going to ask that we adjourn, and we will then take a break and then come back into closed session. So for those of you who are not commissioners, of course, Victor, you'll be joining us, and other staff members that I think Alex will probably join us. Yeah. So thank you very much, everybody. And then I'm just going to stay on because I figure if I turn this off, I'm not sure I'll get back on again.
Hey, Kathy, it's Mike. Will you make the motion to go into
yes.
closed session?
Yeah, I'm going to make it right now.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much. So is there a motion to, this is going to be fairly technical. I asked for Mike to do this for us. Is there a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 and 7 to A, discuss and consider appointments of specific public appointees, and B, consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second motion?
A second.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Okay, I will call the question, and council, will you take a roll call?
Sure. Ms. Hainsworth,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Secretary Johnson,
Aye.
Treasurer Partridge,
Aye.
Vice Chair Quigley,
Aye.
Chair Lang.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, and I think we can now I can call to adjourn the meeting. And can we just all in favor?
If there's no, maybe request whether there's any objection to adjourn.
Any objection to adjourn?
Absolutely no.
No.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks,
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Bye.
Great meeting. Thank you.